Thank you.
I do this with 2 devices, so bear with me. Okay, who do we have? Is everyone here?
Yes,
Yeah, we do have everybody.
Yes.
Justin is not here. The alternate is not here.
Okay. Any changes to the agenda, Paula?
None.
Okay. The minutes of August 23rd, 2021, any changes, modifications, corrections?
Didn't say anything.
None? So I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye or say
Aye.
yes?
All right.
That's unanimous. Any abstentions?
No.
Okay. Audience of citizens, is there anything anybody would like to bring up to us that isn't already on the agenda? Rhonda? Could you just state your name for the record and your,
You need to unmute
Here
yourself.
we go.
I
Okay.
think, can you hear me now?
yes,
Yes.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Kincaid. I live at 8 Basket Shop Road and in Columbia. And I know, I guess you do have the affordable housing plan on the agenda. I just wanted to make you aware, if you weren't already, I hope you know, and that the town got the invitation to a forum on affordable housing that the Wyndham Regional Interfaith Working Group is sponsoring. And that's a week from tonight at 7 o'clock. And if anybody doesn't have that Zoom invitation, I'd be glad to send it to you. But there'll be representatives from the town of Hampton and the town of Mansfield to talk about how they crafted their affordable housing plans, as well as folks from the Partnership for Strong Communities and Sustainable Connecticut, Connecticut Coalition for the Homelessness. So I think it will be a good forum. I would hope it would be helpful to folks. So I just wanted to make you aware of that.
thank you. Nice to see you, Rhonda.
It's nice to see you too.
some
It's been a
time.
long time.
Yes, it has.
Rhonda, does everybody have the link, or Rick, or
No.
Oh.
Rhonda, could you send it to me? P Stall at Columbia CT,
I'll do that right
.org.
now.
and I will send it out to the members.
Okay,
Good.
P
Thank
Stall
you.
at columbiact.org, or I'll
Yes.
do it right after the meeting. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, that said, anything else that's up? Thank you again, Rhonda.
No.
Is there anything under new business, anything under unfinished business? Nothing?
Nothing?
We had a quiet period again. New business, nothing?
Nothing?
Okay, so what we have on the agenda for tonight that we're really going to dig into are regulation revisions. There was 2020, there was legislative action that has compelled us to address some changes in state statute with regard to recreational cannabis, affordable housing plan, potentially multifamily housing, and the use of the word character in our zoning regulations and criteria to evaluate special permit applications. Paula, do you want to start in on this?
I will. In the packet tonight is a draft for the first item, A, the recreational cannabis. The state legislature this year legalized cannabis for recreational use and sale. And at the last meeting that we had, which was in August, the commission asked me to draft some regulations that would permit retail use with some restrictions, distance type and hours type restrictions, and also to draft regulations for a moratorium for the other permitted uses until we can get a better handle on exactly what the pros and cons of some of those other uses, namely the growing and the manufacturing. I don't know what you want to do with these. Do you want me to share my screen so that we can?
Yeah, why don't you share your screen for the draft that you prepared? And we'll
Okay,
use that to catalyze a discussion on, I'd like to get, before we go too far with this, I'd like to find out what the commission's perspective is. We kind of polled the commission previously, but what are they looking for action, if any, moving forward?
you mean
Breaking it
asking the
down
members?
into, dispensaries, retailers, hybrid retailers, the categories that you've identified, and just get a perspective whether they feel action is needed to change our regulations in any way, and if so, how. And I'd just like to get everybody to at least verbalize that, if no more than an initial starting point for our discussion. So why don't you share the proposed regulation?
That's not the right share. Let me try again.
There,
That's further down our list.
So
I
Rick,
could yes,
Yeah, it's in the packet and that's.
I think I
that's-
can do this, Paula, okay? Let me just try.
I can, if you'd like, I can share it.
I
I
can
wasn't,
try.
I have it here. I just,
Okay.
when I was looking for it, I was looking
Okay.
for the
There it is. Do
file and not the packet.
you want to give
um,
us a quick summary of what you came up with and why you came up with it? Or do you want us just to go through it line by line? Any
Um,
thoughts from the commission? So the first thing is, you're proposing that a special permit would be needed for any, that we consider that a special permit would be needed for any type of retailing or selling of cannabis products, correct?
Correct, and that's what, these definitions are pulled directly out of the legislation. And this is what the members, at the last discussion, the end of August, is the members felt that that they were comfortable with a retail business. Not that we're going to be the hot spot of the local area, but it would be okay to have a retailer selling either as the dispensary is the medicinal marijuana, and the hybrid is somebody doing both operations as a dispensary and also as a retailer. And putting some restrictions on in that it is not located within 1,000 feet of a public school, playground, library, or church, and the hours of operation shall be limited to no more than between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. And then adding it into the 31(3) permitted uses in that zone.
So what was your thoughts behind proposing that we do this as a special permit instead of just by right?
I guess it was the conversation that we had in the end of August when you were talking about it being the same as how we approve a liquor store, which is
Is there
by special
ever a
permit.
case where a liquor store could be permitted in town without a special permit? I haven't
No.
reviewed the regulations.
No, it
Okay.
requires a special permit.
What's the commission's perspective on this? Just, does everyone have the same perspective that a special permit should be needed for any type of retailing or sale to the public of marijuana products?
I think it makes sense since it's similar, it's similar to, like a liquor store.
Okay. Anyone else? Does
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
else feel the same way, or
Rick,
does anyone feel differently about it?
It's Tom posing as someone else. And I guess I'm on there right now. Is my understanding that we can only have one spot? I mean, not that Is it that population thing, that 5,000 that I remember seeing somewhere along the line?
I think it's 25,000 and you can, any town can have one.
Okay.
To have a second one, you have to have over 25,000.
So that leaves, so
Population.
we're at one spot. And the other question I have is, I know it has to be not in a residential zone, but do we have to designate certain locations where it can be located?
It would be placed in the section that is for the CM1 and the CM2
So
commercial
anywhere,
districts.
so anywhere. in
Anywhere
CM1,
within that,
CM2.
yeah. And I would recommend a special permit. This is a new product. Neighbors, I think, would want to know that that's coming in to be, could potentially be next door to them or in their backyard. So I would think that it would be wise to do it as a special permit.
And we can, right? We can designate. that.
Yes, yes.
That's all I have.
Okay, anyone else have any other thought?
Yeah, I had a question. Do we want, by doing this, we're prohibiting the producing or cultivating of said cannabis, correct?
With a temporary moratorium that would prohibit it, yes.
Yeah, for a year. I think,
Temporary for a
right?
year, yeah. Unless, just giving the commission enough time to come up to learn more and to come up with appropriate regulations, because nobody else in the state has come up with regulations yet for it.
Right.
Um,
I just don't want to lose sight of it. I think, we've had discussions about wineries and other solar farms and other uses for farmland in the town. And, this is also another use for farmland.
Correct, yep.
So I just don't want to lose sight of it.
Yeah, I think the only difference is all this has to be grown indoors.
Indoors, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
some kind of a
But then I
structure,
can, yeah,
The
it'll have a structure to it though, yes.
exactly. I mean, it could be like a nursery, a plant nursery type of situation.
I think they have to have really high security and there's a lot of regulation that goes along with that.
So what would be the basis for us to put a moratorium on it if there's already overwhelming state regulation of the process? Really, from a zoning standpoint, we're dealing with a building. And we already have regulations to deal with buildings on farm property and also buildings in commercial zones. So why even pursue a moratorium? Maybe because we have rather permissive regulations, we might be a good candidate for gaining a business that would do this because it's easier to get it done here than elsewhere.
I think it's a good idea to hold off on it. Just, because we can make sure, because I guess there's a lot of obnoxious fumes and smells. And if somebody wants to do it, that does stop them from approaching us over in the next year, and we can look at it then. Maybe we'll have some more knowledge for all of us to make a better decision without getting rid of it at this point.
Maybe we're not talking about the manufacturing of it, but just the growing of it. There wouldn't be any fumes with the growing of it.
Correct.
I would not be opposed to growing, let people grow it right now. And then maybe there's a moratorium on the actual production of the cannabis until we know,
The processing of it.
until we know more about the production of it. But certainly the agricultural aspect, the growing of it, I think would be fantastic,
They're pretty looking plants.
Well, they're going to be indoors. You're not going to see them.
This is a kind of discussion I was hoping we would have about it, gaining a perspective of what we're comfortable with and what we aren't and why, and understand all of us understanding each other's perspective on it. And I might have initially said no restriction, but as this discussion catalyzed, I'm thinking, yeah, my lack of apprehension was about the cultivation of it, but any manufacturing processes, yeah, I'd like to have something to say about where that occurs if it's really a manufacturing process with potentially fumes and maybe some effect on neighboring businesses and neighboring residences. You know, I certainly wouldn't want to be, you know, a retail store next door to a production facility where the aroma was wafting through all the time. Although it might help business, it might not.
It'll
You
help
know,
restaurants.
When we hear stuff about the bad aromas and all that, does anybody have specifics on how bad it is, or, you know, or is it just some people don't like the smell of marijuana? I mean, what is, you know, does anybody have any info on that?
I've heard from, the only person I've heard directly from is Mark Walter, who was talking about how it's an acrid smell. It isn't the smell of burning pot. It's
It's acidic, right? It's more of
yeah.
What do they do to make it so accurate?
I have no idea.
I know. that
probably-
doesn't sound-
And that's why we don't know enough. So it's the temper, and this is the temporary and limited moratorium.
It's part of the process that stinks is when they're processing it and drying it out, there's very high amounts of it concentrated together. So the aroma becomes very strong. You can even smell it when it's growing and all the buds and stuff. Not that I've ever seen this, but
It's not from personal knowledge, Rich?
I did live a while down in the Everglades, and they used to process a lot down there. It's at the end of the season where the smell becomes strong. Even in the plants, you can smell it, but usually when it's harvest time, it's like anything, you know, any farm products, the intensity goes up when it's all condensed. So that's the process right there that stinks. It's probably a shorter window of time. It's probably not it's not like Frito-Lay where you get it year round where they're frying grease and potatoes.
I mean, is it any different since we live in a farming community and you're behind a manure truck? I mean, is it that bad, or? I mean,
Apparently it is. It's,
Unless
and
it's
you
a
don't
pig
want to live
farm.
next door to it. If you're
So
following a truck.
Let me just, I think, let me just summarize where I think we are, and please, somebody speak up if I'm misstating the perspective. So I think we're comfortable with needing a special permit for retailing the product and selling to the public. We're comfortable with not really doing much to limit right now, having a regulation to limit the growing of cannabis, especially given that there are overwhelming state regulations that will be in place about that. But the processing we're going to want to weigh in on, and maybe we want to pursue a moratorium on any processing of cannabis products. And you know, you can call it manufacturing, processing, whatever you want. We'll look for some guidance from Paula. And so I think what we would like is a moratorium for 12 months on the processing or manufacturing of products, but growing, no intention of addressing that with a prohibition of any sort. And then as far as retailing, when I say retailing, that's selling to the public, either through a medical dispensary or a public dispensary, or you mentioned a hybrid establishment, that we would like a special permit, and it will probably mirror somewhat our alcohol regulations for package stores. You know, we'll look at the different types of adjacent uses in the 1,000-foot setback that we're requiring, whether we want all of them in place for the public sale of cannabis products. Does that sound like a reasonable summary of where we probably are? And the charge would be to Paula to come back with a refined regulation that would enable that perspective effectively.
Rick, are you going to require a special permit for the growing part of it?
I don't know. How do you all feel? I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. I think that the state regulations are going to overwhelmingly control that. And
In our building permit process will control structure, for example, making sure it's within setbacks and things like that. So I don't think the growing aspect of it requires a special permit.
Would you
I
want
don't
a-
either. And if the scale of the buildings are the size of a horse arena, for example,
That's right. Size.
then there are larger setbacks for that type of building, and we might want to take a hard look at what the setbacks are based on the scale of the building, not what's going on inside of it. But if there's a certain size building proposed on farmland to establish a cannabis growing operation, I think we want to be, very respectful of neighbors, especially residential neighbors. And we're already doing that with the horse arena regulation. So we may have a template more or less in place that we could borrow.
Does
The
the
hor-
state specify what kind of building? I'm thinking of a greenhouse. Would they grow it in a greenhouse building?
Yeah,
That's a-
and how many greenhouses on
We
one
don't,
property?
we don't know yet.
Almost certainly it's all artificial lighting. I don't believe that they grow it utilizing any natural sunlight. So and that the physical security necessary and required by the state, and I don't know this, this is what, I've learned from the television reporting that I've listened to. The physical security the state it imposes on growing, I can't comprehend that a greenhouse could comply with that kind of security. So if we want to know more about it and we're worried about it, I'm more comfortable deferring to state regulation of that. If anything, their regulation is going to be so restrictive to make whatever we come up with look paltry.
I'm not
think-
sure that the state would be concerned with setbacks or any impact on neighbors.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't reference setbacks in what those items that I just outlined.
Mm,
I was just referring to the physical security. I was responding to what Alex asked
Okay,
about.
Yeah, the other thing to think about is the light pollution, potential light pollution.
Yep, yep.
Just as we have sound regulations, sound going beyond a property line, we might want to think about, illumination and light pollution.
You mean light pollution from the indoor operation?
Yep.
So if it's all indoors, I would assume that none of that light escapes.
It could be a greenhouse with lights.
Okay,
That's the
I
way.
guess we do need
And
to
the
know more
and the-
about this.
Yeah, and the security things could require outside lighting too.
Yeah.
Paula, can you see what you could find out about what would be a suitable physical growing environment from the state's perspective, if they've even formulated that yet?
I will look into that. And it's
Yeah.
just listening to the conversations, I'm thinking that perhaps it's going back up to this page. Whoops, went too far. Here, we add a C that's cultivator, and also have a special permit with that so that the commission can make sure that, and could have special setbacks there, and treat it like we do the horse arena, which is a special permit.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, I think it's also an opportunity to look at all the other things we just talked about, the light pollution, the security,
Yep.
whatever.
So many
I think
things
it's
that
more
I had.
complicated than just
I'm sorry, Bob. So many things were brought up just now that I hadn't thought of about this. This is
Yeah.
what we do. Thank you. A lot of good thoughts. Yeah, let's continue this on our agenda. And I would think, Paula, maybe a reasonable goal would be 2 more meetings. We'd be ready to propose a regulation and change.
Okay,
I like to have something in front of us that's very specific. I don't think by the next meeting, I think if you could gather us some more information on the growing process, and I don't even know that we need to look into the cultivation process right now. I think the
that is the
moratorium is
grow, yeah.
the manufacturing and processing. I think we are looking for, maybe we could come up with a very well-defined regulation for the moratorium, separate from the special permit regulations that would be needed for
This is the
retailing
moratorium, yeah.
and for possibly cultivation.
This is the draft moratorium for everything other than what's permitted under 52,722 for cannabis establishments. And it's no one can open until next July. But it's, someone could acquire property and start heading in a direction that we'd have to be working to catch up with them on. So,
Okay.
How far do you want to get into this tonight, everybody? Or I think
I
we
think we're
started a
pretty
good
good right now.
conversation.
Yeah,
Maybe it's
we're
best that we
fine.
review
I'm
these
fine at
in
this
more
point.
depth. I'm sorry.
I'm fine at this point.
Yeah, I'm fine with this at this
So
point.
am I.
I've got
I'm
one
good.
more question, Rick, one more question, please.
Please.
Do we really need to put a moratorium on here? Because there's a deadline with the moratorium that if we don't act in a year, then it's rescinded. So,
it's
If-
permitted if we don't have
if we-
regulations for it.
fine, things that are not allowed are not mentioned in the planning and zoning regs. So it would be up to us next year to kind of revisit it. I'm just questioning whether we need a moratorium or not.
It seems from what I've heard from others in my field, and also what I've interpreted in the legislation, is that it would be by right unless the town has regulations or has prohibited.
Well, that's
When you
not,
say by right, by right to retail it, by right to grow it?
Yes, by right for all of every
All the above.
facet of it, all of the above. That's my understanding.
okay, that's because the state legislation worded it that way?
I have not read it in a couple months, Bob, but that was the impression that I got when I read it and made me want to put in a moratorium or recommend a moratorium until we got all our
I'd like
ducks
to
in a row.
understand more about what the right would be before
Yep.
I want to enact
Yep.
a moratorium. But I think we could be prepared to move quickly with any potential moratorium. I would like to know more about what the real right that's granted by the state statute is that we are concerned with.
Yeah, I will dig that out. And some of it is how attorneys interpret the legislation. So it's.
Yeah, the only downside, Paula, is that on November 30th, 2022, or whatever the date is, we have to take action to extend the moratorium or it's rescinded,
Right.
right? Yeah,
Moratoriums have to be short-term. You can't do a long-term moratorium, and I'm not sure you could extend it.
I appreciate
if you-
it. I just think that we have to be careful not to miss that deadline because
Oh,
then
yeah.
they can come in and automatically they get it, even though we may want to extend the moratorium.
Well, if we don't have a moratorium, then the law on July 1st will go into effect.
Right, right.
So I will research some more to see exactly what could happen if we didn't act. Yeah.
So I just did a quick search. In Simsbury, there's a grower, Curaleaf. Their production facility for growing is 32,000 square feet.
I'm not
Pretty nice
surprised.
looking.
If you're gonna
And
do
the-
it, you gotta do it big enough to make it profitable.
And there's already 4 of them in the state that I'm just scanning through. So you can probably, if you want to do some research, start looking around and see what they look like, how the facilities are, I did that in 2 minutes and found it, so.
So this
They're doing medicinal growing.
Yeah,
which is
medical
permitted.
And medical marijuana, but the growing procedures are still gonna have the same
It'd be the same.
restrictions.
Yeah. Yeah.
This still qualifies as a farm, correct? Farm
It's
product?
agricultural.
I
But
don't
it's-
know.
Which means we don't get any tax base from it.
I don't know what it would be classed as.
Which means it can be done in a residential district.
But
An RA district, the growing of it.
But if it's considered agricultural, then, and it's on a farm, then it becomes the rate for farms, which is pretty low, right, as far as taxes are concerned, right?
No, the farmland that's you can get a reduced tax if it's farmland used as, without buildings on it. Buildings get taxed.
Right.
Yeah, there's no
I
discount
don't,
for
I
the
don't think there's a
buildings.
tax break for a large indoor growing operation.
No, no, there wouldn't be.
Well, it'd be nice to know that because, I mean, if we're going to encourage it, it would be nice if we got some taxes from it too.
Okay. I don't think anyone disagrees with you, Bob.
That's for sure.
Okay. All right, we're all set for this evening on recreational cannabis. So Paul is going to gather more information for us on what the side effects of the processing and manufacturing of cannabis products are. We're going to gain a bit more insight into the level of state overview of the growing process, physical security, and things like that. And we'll continue this discussion to our next regularly scheduled meeting. Everyone good with that?
Good.
Yes.
And if you think of more things that we might ask Paula to research, please, reach out to her and ask so that we can come to the next meeting prepared. Because whatever we're going to do, if we're going to do it, we might as well get it done. But I don't want to do it in a rash way. I want to do it well informed. But we probably do better to do it in a more timely manner. Next up is affordable housing plan.
I've been working on it. We're required to do an affordable housing plan every 5 years. That's the deadline for that is, I believe it's June 1st. It might be July 1st, but I've been working on it, putting the statistics together, and I should have a draft for the commission to review probably in another month or two. I'm doing it as time permits.
Well, let me ask you a practical question. What can a town like Columbia do within our zoning regulations that addresses the state mandate?
Well, one of the state mandates is that we have a affordable housing plan.
I understand, but what would be contained in that plan to meet the state mandate, the typical type of thing?
They're
Well,
looking,
I look at the town of Columbia and its housing and affordable housing probably refers to new construction of housing. What would we be obligated under state statute to allow, large multi-story buildings with very compact housing living conditions that aren't really permitted under our current regulations? Where does that go? Is what I'm trying to get a general concept as to what an effective affordable housing plan would look like.
I'll let you know as I progress with it.
So you have no background in it, no experience, no
I've written-
understanding of how it applies elsewhere.
I beg to differ, but yes, I've not,
No. I posed that rhetorically because I didn't get an answer out of you when I asked that question.
Will
We
the
need-
will the affordable housing plan identify the number of units that will be required?
no, it's looking more at where we are today. Are we meeting the needs of the people who live in town? Or people who might want to live in our town? Are we keeping people out because some of our regulations are too restrictive? It would look at ways to increase housing by perhaps in part of the town have smaller lot size. I don't know the answer to exactly what would work for us. The state also, part of this plan, you need to identify steps that you will take.
I didn't ask for the answers. I asked for the types of things that an affordable housing plan could potentially address, and you've answered some of that. So did not ask for the conclusion. I just simply asked for an understanding of what an affordable housing plan potentially might address.
It
Rick,
will look at what is available for affordable housing in town? What, is it meeting the needs of the residents? What income level our residents have? What can they afford at that income level in terms of, is it at 80% of their income, the housing costs? And it's, well, I'm not going to be the one figuring out what we need to be doing for the future. I might make some suggestions, but that's something that the commission will need to consider, how to go about making more housing affordable to people who are the normal working folks. And I know our seniors are been complaining, and shouldn't say complaining, I've been asking for housing to meet their needs that's affordable.
Okay,
So there's an economic aspect to this as
No,
well as
definitely,
the planning aspect.
What do you mean by there's an economic component of the plan?
Right, you have to analyze some economic data to determine what's affordable, for example. Who's
Correct.
to determine that?
Correct.
So the question I would have, Paul, is, and not to question you, well, I have confidence that you can identify the planning and zoning aspects of the plan, but if there's an economic portion of that, is there another type of person that would be doing that kind of work? That would have the
No,
back?
I have a degree that gives me that qualification.
Okay.
I haven't,
I mean, if you're
This-
confident, if not, maybe
Yeah.
is there somebody we should hire to assist you in that component of the plan?
we could have hired a firm to do this. I felt I could do it in-house.
Okay.
I have an MS in finance and an
Mhm.
MBA in finance, and I've worked in that field my entire life, doing analysis all the time.
Okay.
I have a question. Elderly housing for those people who currently live in town, who would want to downsize to say a couple rooms, would that kind of housing be included in affordable housing?
Yes, it would. And I think
Alex,
that's something
as-
that
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that's something that I've heard for a long time, that need from our over 55, over 65 population, looking for a way to stay in town in a place that they can afford.
Alex, this is something we've weighed in on in the past many times. We've addressed it during the public hearings for the plan of conservation and development. As we've redone that several times, we've had multiple public hearings on it. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback, and I won't bring all that up right now, but those are things that we can kind of revisit some of the public input that we've received in the past as we get farther into this. I was simply looking from Paula, what the components of a document that would address the state regulation, what the components might look like, what components would be in there. Not what they would say, but the general outline of what types of things we would address in order to be compliant with the state regulation. And I have a better idea now.
I can provide that information. I can email that out to you folks. They lay it out, and Rick, I sent you the document from the state when you asked for it a couple months ago.
Yes.
But what goes into it is analysis of where you are today. What's the percentage of the population that is having struggling with housing costs, and then looking at different ways to ease that. The next item that we're talking about is one of the tools, is the multifamily housing.
Yeah, can I weigh in on this, or it's
Please
Tom?
do.
Yeah, my understanding, and I could be wrong, but I always thought that when they talked about affordable housing, they were talking about, I can't remember if it was 5% or 10%, but Columbia has approximately what, 1,600, 1,700 housing units. So I think that what's been said is I think I would think the state would want to know where, where and how many you're going to do with multifamilies, and are you going to put any additional apartments in? And then I think they'll go by state guidelines for some subsidized housing for people who have, low income to occupy these places. That's my understanding of affordable housing. Am I off base here?
Little
A
bit.
little bit, yeah. Affordable housing isn't low income. Nurses can't afford to rent in places or to buy a house. It's, single moms can't afford it. It isn't low income. It's just,
Yeah, well, I'm not saying it's necessarily low, Paula, but I mean, we all know the cost of housing, especially for a single person, whether it be a single woman or a single guy or
correct.
somebody with two kids and a single parent. The cost of housing in this part of the state is a little bit better than some parts of the state, obviously.
Yeah.
But I still think it's difficult with the labor situation in terms of what the people are being paid. I'm not
Right.
sure I'd use nurses. Many nurses do very well, but it's my feeling is the person who has that job that's making $18, $20 an hour, which is above the minimum wage, but certainly not necessarily
I think it's about
make them,
20.
to buy a house or,
Yeah.
go from there.
I think it's $25 an hour is what's needed for reasonable
Right,
housing.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Which eliminates a lot of folks.
right.
Work harder. Work more. So if anybody wanted to, if you just search affordable housing in Connecticut guidelines, there's several good websites. One of them is the ConnecticutPlanning.org, has a real good outline with our deadline of June 1, 2022. And then there's several other ones, Affordable Housing Online, which has some pretty good outlines. So we don't have to go back and forth. We can kind of look a little bit on our own. I think we can get through this a lot faster. I think that's where Paula was trying to go, is have us come up with stuff and she could write it for us. Am I
No,
correct?
I'm writing it, and I didn't bring
That's what I
anything
said.
tonight. Yeah, I will write it, and I will. I need
Yeah,
your
but
help
that's
certainly.
Yeah, that's gonna take some time. I mean, this is just thrown at Paula, so I don't think we're gonna,
From what
ask
I'm
her
seeing-
for any big outline right this
Yeah.
evening. I think it's pretty unrealistic.
I know we currently have about 4% affordable housing by the standard of the 10% we're supposed to have. It's going to be difficult for a town like Columbia to get to 10%. Even having a plan, even changing regulations, it's going to be very difficult because, as you know, we have all housing is going to have to meet sanitarian requirements for a well and septic system, which is going to drive a cost up. So I applaud the state for requiring every single town to take a look at affordable housing, because many of the towns have zoned so that no houses less than 5,000 square feet on 15 acres can build in this particular part of town. That's not providing any affordable housing. So I understand why they did it. But a town like Columbia, because of the soils that we have, it's going to be very, very difficult to implement any sort of plan. We still have to write it.
Paul, that makes me think of when we were doing that stuff on that Route 6 corridor. If you had some adjacent lots that you could combine and do the shared well and shared septic
Right.
on 2 or 3 or 4 lots at the same time, because of our soils, I thought that might be a solution to that problem.
You're
And
right. However, the drawback is the state of Connecticut requires the state health department approve any kind of a shared system of size,
Yeah.
which takes a year and a half for approval.
Yeah, but if you're working
Developers
on it,
don't, yeah, developers don't wait for that. They go somewhere where they'll develop
well,
something.
things change too.
Yep,
I mean,
yep.
you know, if the market dictates that type of process, I mean, the builders are putting up with 6 and 8 month delays right now, not any fault of their own, but just due to the, you know, production of materials. So I mean, you know, I just think it's another thing they're going to have to deal with somewhere down
Yep,
the line.
yep. I've been working with Chris Ram on the neighborhood senior housing that he's been wanting to put in. And it's the biggest drawback is the approval process
Sure.
to put in multiple buildings on one lot.
Yep. Yep.
Not our
Well-
approval, the state approval.
No, but I
The
think
health
I
department,
think
yeah.
developers are aware of that right now too.
But they
It
can
just is, it
develop.
just
in a-
is what it is right now.
It
That's-
is right, it is, very definitely.
It
But
is.
if a developer is trying to make money, time is money, and they
Yep.
will go to a town that has that has city services. Because they can build right away.
Yeah, but a lot of the small town, not to be argumentative, but a lot of the small towns, particularly in northeast part of the state, don't have city water and sewers. I
Right,
mean,
right.
they just don't. And if they
Right,
want,
yep.
and if they want us to do it, and we're not going to be the only ones screaming. They're going to have to be somewhat flexible. I think they are.
I think so too. I've been pushing for that various avenues for a decade, if not more, when I was at UConn. And this DEP does the approval and it takes forever and they have no interest in speeding it up.
No. Not at
Okay.
this point.
That's enough on this for tonight. What about multifamily housing?
Well, also the state legislation changed and added the fact that effective 12 days ago, multifamily housing is permitted anywhere in a town unless there's a specific area that multifamily is permitted.
So on page 9 of the handout for this evening, there's a draft that Paul has done. I'd like you to all read through that and gain a
The,
perspective. 9, 10, 9, 10,
Yep.
and 11.
Yeah,
The,
Page 8.
when we started talking about this a month ago, the end of August, I had suggested some of our the commercial areas that are along the Route 6 corridor. There's quite a few parcels there that a developer for commercial has not been interested in, and it seems that perhaps someone would be able to put multifamily there. One of the things I wanted to make sure is that whoops, I didn't mean to do that. To make sure that we were allowing in areas or in the town that we were proposing something, that it was feasible to actually have regulations that could be met there. I know some towns in the past have put in regulations that, you know, oh, you can put it over here. Well, there's no lot that in that area that would meet the regulations. So there's, I looked at in the CM1 area, I found 14 lots that could potentially have multifamily housing. 3 of them are under 10 acres, so I don't think those would be feasible. But there's 11 that's at least 10 acres, 8 of them that are at least 15 acres, and 6 that are 20 acres. So I think it's reasonable to suggest this for the CM1 zone, to add multifamily housing to it. I also drafted, I'm sorry.
One thing that would be helpful would be to gain a perspective as to what kind of density on a typical acre of land in terms of units per acre, not on a 1 acre lot. Clearly, what kind of density is potentially the maximum feasible density based on the science of the septics?
Each site is different. We're a
I
little bit, there's
understand.
more gravel through there, so the potential is there. In the draft regulations, which I didn't start with a blank sheet of paper, I started with other communities' regulations. And one of the things that is in here is including a limit on the density per acre. So that's something that could be specified, so that you wouldn't be, even if the soils could support, 30 units, a density requirement could limit that.
Okay, so we're currently at the point where, in essence, we're looking at a current single family density of about one residence or potentially two residence units per building lot of about 50,000 square feet. So where might this go in terms of density based on theoretical limits? Having that information would be interesting, to say the least, for myself. I don't know how the rest of the commission members feel about it. Are we completely precluded from looking at anything more than 4 units per acre or something along that line? Just trying to get a practical perspective from, the experience of other towns that have no sewer systems and have multifamily housing on country lots that use septic systems. Where does this go? I mean, we clearly probably can't fit 30 units on 1 acre. It just can't absorb enough water.
There's a lot, Rick, there's a lot of them down in Ledger that really started out as apartments, and they're 800-900 square feet. And I'm just thinking of the one on Ash. There's probably 20 units on a 5 acre parcel.
And they use septic systems,
Yep.
and the septic systems have held up over time.
They're 40 years old,
Okay.
19 to
That's the
50
kind of
years old.
information I'm very curious about. That's really helpful information. Thank you, Tom.
So it can be done, is my point.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all about maintenance, right?
If you've got good ownership, it is. It should, and these units have a great group that owns them. Nate Weiss and his crew.
So on the third page of this draft, talk about density and number of units. And the number that I plugged in here was 8 dwelling units per gross acre. And gross acre is defined here. And then having a bonus if it's an affordable unit. An affordable unit for the state statutes is deed restricted, so that the rents stay at a certain percentage of.
Right. Yeah, that's the type of thing I was asking about earlier. Percentage of income.
Yeah.
Being subsidized by the state.
Not
Where's
necessarily. Yeah,
Rich? Where's Rich?
this does not need to be. Not all of this would need to be subsidized.
No,
It would
no.
just be a deed restriction that the rent on this particular unit, it wouldn't have to be all the units in the apartments in
Right.
in a development. But, on these, the units in, 1 unit in each building or whatever is deed restricted. And it's pegged to the current cost of living
Right.
as to what. So in order to encourage that, it's you would allow a developer to add affordable units so that they get a little bit higher density.
Yep.
We
Okay.
don't need to adopt anything It's, should be part of our affordable housing plan to adopt something. But currently, as of 12 days ago, a developer can put a multifamily development in Columbia.
So the big question becomes, where do we want to see it? And do we want, what kind of controls do we want on it? And what does the science support as a reasonable limit? Do you all look at it the same way?
Pretty close.
And we've got, we have an awful lot of undeveloped land in the CM1 that could potentially bring in tax revenue.
Just a side thought, has anybody ever been approached by Habitat for Humanity to build housing in Columbia?
Not that I've heard.
I'm sorry, Alex, I didn't hear you.
I was just asking if anybody in the past had, from Habitat for Humanity, has approached Columbia for building in the town.
Not to my knowledge.
Not that I'm aware of, Alex. Okay, why don't we pass over this part of this? The last item has to do with character.
Is there
Um,
something that you would like me to work on in terms of the multifamily housing?
I'd like to know what well, I think digging into what you put out, the last page, in more depth. I haven't had a chance to review it, so. Let's review what you've presented already on that. And if
Okay.
anyone has a desire for more info, please reach out to either myself or Paula. We can move that forward with more research. So we've started a discussion. So nothing more right now, Paula.
Okay.
Paula, Paula, is there a time, is there a
Pardon?
time-sensitive issue with this one?
With the multifamily housing,
Yes.
only if you want to control it. Currently, somebody can put
Yeah.
multifamily housing anywhere in town as of October 1st
But it
by
would
state statute.
require a special permit, correct?
I don't know. It may require a special permit, but it's, if you don't have it in your regulations, you can't prohibit them.
So we have to do this quickly.
If you want to control where it is and
Yeah.
what it looks like, yes.
May I, just one more thing that's like the elephant in the room for me now here too, is mobile homes. What's the play on that?
The only thing that changed in the legislation is that you can't consider a mobile home that's, I believe, 22 feet wide, or maybe it's 24 feet wide, any differently than a regular house.
Regular single family home?
Yeah,
Correct.
but most mobile homes are 12 to 18 feet. So it
Now,
doesn't,
the double wides are 24.
Yeah.
that's, you don't measure them as double wides.
Well, that's what I always call.
Yeah. So my understanding is that the double wide wouldn't be treated as a house. It would still be treated as a mobile home.
Okay.
How so if they have the width threshold? Because it
It-
becomes one structure, they just come shipped in two halves. Once it's assembled, it's
Well-
a single structure.
Right, right.
Well, if it's a manufactured home to be permanently installed somewhere, it's different than a mobile home.
We
Yeah,
weren't
mobile
talking about
home still has its
manufactured
wheels.
homes. We were talking about mobile homes, correct?
Yeah, but yeah, that's what I'm asking about. And I just, I.
Yeah,
would
let's
think that
answer the question that was asked. Does a double wide mobile home, is that permitted by right now under the state statute? That's a yes or no question.
I can read the regulation to you. It's effective January 1st, so it isn't today. It says mobile/manufactured houses that are 22 feet or wider will need to be treated the same as any single family
Single
home.
family home.
So
That
double
makes sense.
wides are now permitted in Columbia.
I guess, I don't know that,
It
As
said
long as they're
mobile.
22, as long as they're 22 feet wide.
Where do you see that that's not clear? I don't understand how that's not clear.
Is-
Explain to
says
me
mobile or
why you
manufactured,
think it may
right?
not apply.
I will reread the definitions. I understand.
Okay,
I think of double wides as a separate category that are not, that this does not pertain to.
based on what logic? Help me to understand your perspective.
I'm sorry, Rick, I don't have logic tonight.
Okay,
It sounds like a mobile because it says mobile or
Yeah,
manufactured.
yeah. But I believe it's each half, but I will reread the legislature and we'll get in touch with Rich Roberts. I mean, it is what it is. It isn't something that we can change a regulation to avoid.
That's a state
Um,
statute.
It's a state statute. And it would
I
be
think
something that,
clearly, as a community, we don't want to move against a state statute, but on the same token, if you have a delightful 2,600 square foot colonial home in a subdivision in Columbia, you don't want somebody to come in and plunk down a double wide mobile home on the next lot over, propped up on cinder blocks. Reasonable perspective to take, everybody?
Well, I'm
Well, you
not
could-
sure you're catching the drift of the state statute though, Rick, honestly, and they're not all, the cinder block ones are not, that's not the way they do them now. I'm just playing devil's advocate in a sense. They are very nicely, then to me, that in some ways, they're not any different than a ranch house that's manufactured. I just don't see the difference.
Well, the difference is a steel undercarriage, number one, and number two, lack of a permanent foundation. So those are the big differences.
But they're meeting the requirements for the state is saying that they're the same thing.
They're
And
not
so-
the same. The construction is not the same thing. The
No, but
construction.
the state is saying they are the same thing. Am I wrong?
From a
Well, I
plan
think
standpoint, they are the same thing.
you're
Repeat
saying
that's
that,
not the
Bob.
point. No, wait, hold on a second. That's not the point about this. The point is, if we need regulations that are governing these, do we need to get them in place quickly if we don't want to see a mobile home plunked down next to a conventionally built home in our
I
town?
understand. your
That's the
point, Rick,
question.
but that's
the
not what the
question.
state
That's the only
statute
thing that I
says.
was posing.
Okay.
You know, that's a reasonable question for us to ask from a planning and a zoning standpoint. So we can ask it, but if the state's now permitting somebody to plunk a double wide mobile home next to a conventionally built home in a conventional subdivision, and if we don't want that, we need to take action on it. And if we want to allow it, then we'll make a decision as a commission
See,
on that.
that's the point I don't get, that you don't seem to be I mean, the statute it seems to be clear, and I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying we have to deal with what the state is telling us what we have to deal with. And
And they're
they're
saying it's
saying,
permitted unless we prohibit it, correct,
Not-
Paula?
No, I'm
That-
not saying that. I'm
no,
saying it's
that's not at
permitted.
all.
It's
They're
They're
permitted,
saying we
period.
can't
That
treat
as
it
of October
differently.
1st, they can't be viewed differently. Am I wrong?
That's
No,
my
that's what I hear.
understanding.
That's what I hear.
Thank you.
That
That's
is
what I
so
hear.
not, you know, I would like to know that in an absolute way, because that is so non-logical and it's so not keeping with our charge of protecting the the
So-
existing homeowners.
So Rick, are you just learning that government isn't non-logical?
No, I'm just saying we have to
Yeah,
deal
that
with
just
what
came
we're
over me
being-
right now. Thank
I
you.
mean, if they've passed the state statute, I don't see where we have a lot of choice.
It's all in the definition and and I cannot find it I'm flipping through the regulation here.
Tom, you and I walk through these pieces of junk homes. I mean, yeah, they
Rick,
have
that's
their
not, Rick,
place.
I understand, Rick, that's not my argument. That's not my discussion. My discussion is that what Paula said, that I heard Paula say, was that as of October 1st, they could not consider a unit that was 22 foot wide or more any different than a normal constructed single-family home.
And I want to dig into that because it makes no sense to me.
Okay, that may not, but that's what I heard.
Okay.
But I don't, that's why I don't think it pertains to double wides,
Okay,
but I will verify it. I'm not, I've flipped through the legislation.
it could be that
3
we
times.
simply need to require all houses built to have a permanent foundation. And that may be the differentiation for us. I don't know. But
I
I
don't
want to
either.
know. I don't want to think. I mean, I want to think, but I don't want to, this based on us surmising what we think might be the case. I want to know it absolutely.
Well, you know, there is even some ways around that foundations. If you go down south, they pour pads that go underneath mobile homes all the time that cover the whole thing. So they can get fancy and get around that and drop a mobile home, a double wide on a slab. And that's considered a foundation. So there's
But you
ways
can-
around it, just like we're looking for a way around mobile homes, right?
But we can still control the slab and how it's connected to the slab and the nature of that slab.
Maybe the building inspector that would concerned with that.
Okay. All right.
And any foundation in the state of Connecticut has to be a minimum of 42 inches deep. That's the
Around
building
the
code,
perimeter,
around
yeah,
Right.
the building code.
below the frost line, yeah.
Okay.
It's safe for the people who live in those buildings. It's much safer, we have winds around here now that would push them right off the foundations. If they're not
They put an
tied
anchor in the
down.
middle and strap them down.
too.
Okay.
That's,
Thank you.
they're all over down
Um,
south. Now, the
let's
problem
go
I
on
think with
to-
mobile homes is no matter how nice they are, they don't have the longevity and they end up breaking down a lot quicker than a conventional home.
That's
And in
right.
part, it's because it's open to the atmosphere. The walls are generally built more like a camper. They're thinner. Everything about them is,
No,
Insulation's
I'm not,
poor.
Rick, that's not my point is what.
I know.
what I
Can we
heard
not get
him
into
say.
this evening? The question here was whether a mobile home is mandated, if it's a double wide mobile home that meets the width size, is mandated to be allowed anywhere that we allow a normally constructed stick-built or manufactured home. That's the question.
Okay,
That's what we want to know, and we want to know what that in depth. We really do, because to see a very low quality housing stock proliferate isn't our goal either. Affordable, yes, but not low quality. We just don't want garbage homes being plunked down next to beautifully built homes. That's just not keeping with what one of our charges is.
One of
I
our
don't know if
charges
anyone
is to
feels differently
protect-
about that, but that's the basis for the question and the
Yep.
additional information I hope to gain.
I will, on Thursday, my next day in Columbia, I will send out an email with the exact language that was.
Thank you. So
um,
next up is covering item D, character. That tends to be more of an administrative suggested change because we can't use that as a definition. There's a different definition we're going to have to use as it applies now in the state statute. So they made some work for us. That's what they do all the time.
And I've figured out there's 22 of them in our regulations. 22 times we say character. And it's different words fit better in different places. And I have a draft already. I also think it's more just staff changing phrases, but it still has to go through zoning regulation revisions. But
So
so I don't think we need to discuss that, but it's.
No, that's more wordsmithing. We'll get
Yep,
to
yep.
that. Okay, I'm going to move on to item 8.2. Section 3 revision. Nothing on that tonight, correct?
No, I would like to bring that up. Section 3, we talk about the fact that a zoning permit is required for every structure. But then under definitions, we say that a structure is basically anything that's affixed to the ground, which would include propane tanks, sheds, small things. And the problem we're having right now is that because of the way our regulations are stated, somebody who wants to put in a shed, or it seems, I'd like to be in the propane tank installation business. Everybody seems to be getting generators and propane tanks in town these days. But both the propane tank and the generator are structures, considered structures by our definition, so they need a zoning permit. Well, our zoning permit fee is $10. That's fine. But for every zoning permit, we need to give $60 to the state of Connecticut.
Ooh.
So we're looking for a way and signs are another one. If somebody's just coming in for a sign because it requires a zoning permit, we need to charge, signs are $25 fee plus $60. I don't have a draft to share. I just wanted to see if the commission would be open to changing the regulations so that a zoning permit was not required in certain instances. However, a certificate of zoning compliance so that the zoning agent would look and make sure that they were complying with zoning in terms of
Is everyone
setbacks.
good with that? I'm all for that.
Okay,
I think that's universal. Anyone disagree? Okay, good suggestion. Thank you.
okay, so I'll work on pulling a draft together on that.
Appreciate it.
And that's all I have on reg revisions.
Okay, and so there's nothing under 8.3 tonight, correct?
No, correct.
Okay. All right. No, anything under communication and reports? Nothing? Anything anyone on the commission would like to bring up? Audience of citizens, anything anyone else would like to bring up to us? It wasn't on the agenda. Rhonda, again, we really appreciate you staying with us through the meeting, and we appreciate your input.
Thank you. I'll send that email out to Paula with the information on the forum. So thank you.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Is there a reason?
Thanks,
Thank you.
Rhonda.
Paula, any reason to go into executive session for the pending legal issue?
No.
Okay.
Have you,
Then I'll make a
unless you
motion to
have any,
adjourn.
okay.
I'll second it.
All
Second.
those in favor? Yep, that looks unanimous to me. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Flo, can you stop the recording?
Yes, I will.